The sound came first, a single clap, sharp and clean, slicing through the tension like glass through fabric. Then another, and another. Before anyone could register who it was, heads turned, cameras refocused, and there he stood, Kevin Hern, the Republican stalwart, the numbers man, the loyal soldier of party lines, was clapping. For a second, no one breathed. The marble walls of the chamber seemed to hold their breath too. Across the aisle, Jasmine Crockett hadn't moved. Her eyes were still fixed on the papers before her, her voice still echoing faintly in the corners of the room. The last words she had spoken, words about truth, about integrity, about the kind of leadership that isn't rented by the hour, still hung in the air like smoke after a match. A few seats down, a reporter dropped his pen. Someone muttered under their breath, "Is this real?" The House floor wasn't built for moments like this. Not applause from across the aisle. Not recognition that cut through partisanship. Not this kind of stillness. The cameras zoomed in, hungry for evidence. Hern's hands came together again, measured, deliberate, unflinching. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't posturing. It wasn't mockery. It was the sound of conviction surprising itself. Crockett finally lifted her gaze, just enough to meet his. For a heartbeat, the room became two people. One who spoke truth, and one who finally recognized it. The divide of ideology, color, and history collapsed into that small, almost imperceptible nod between them. Then came the murmurs, reporters whispering, aides exchanging glances, a dozen live feeds blinking red as anchors tried to improvise over the silence. The usual choreography of outrage had broken down. And beneath the hum of confusion was something even rarer: respect. People watching at home would replay this moment 100 times, trying to decode it. Was it sincerity? Strategy? Regret? Or was it something simpler? One man realizing he had just witnessed leadership, not performance? Whatever it was, it changed the temperature of the room. The noise of politics had paused, if only for a fleeting second, to let integrity speak. But to understand why this applause mattered, you have to see what led to this impossible moment. The hearing room felt less like a chamber of governance and more like a stage where outrage had been rehearsed for weeks. Lights burned hotter than usual. Each camera trained not on truth, but on performance. Microphones buzzed with impatience. Every politician seemed ready with a line crafted for a clip, not a conscience. At the center of it all sat Jasmine Crockett, quiet, composed, her pen tapping a steady rhythm against the desk, a metronome of restraint. Across from her, a panel of lawmakers hurled insinuations cloaked in civility. Ethics, one said, stretching the word like it was elastic. Another smirked as he implied impropriety, his tone soaked in sarcasm. They weren't asking questions. They were baiting reactions. Viewers at home had seen this play before. The circular accusations, the practiced indignation, the smug pauses designed for cable news replays. But this time felt heavier. America was tired of masks worn as morals, tired of loyalty swearing itself to lies. Crockett didn't flinch. Her silence carried weight. Every glance she refused to return said more than a paragraph of protest could. The reporters in the press row sensed that something was coiling beneath her calm, something real in a room allergic to it. The chairman's gavel cracked, a hollow sound that failed to restore control. Voices rose, overlapping, each trying to outdo the other in performance. Yet through the chaos, she remained still, her eyes fixed on the table, her thoughts gathering like thunderclouds. And then it happened, the smallest shift of her posture, the tightening of her jaw, the signal that patience had reached its end. And when she finally stood, every word cut, sharper than expected. Kevin Hern had always been the picture of composure, the man who could smile through scandal, balance numbers while dodging truths, and deliver his talking points with the precision of a surgeon. He spoke in tones that comforted his base, calm, reasoned, rehearsed. You could almost forget that behind that practiced steadiness was a man terrified of being wrong. Months before this hearing, he'd stood before cameras defending party unity. Transparency, he'd said, was a noble concept, but timing matters. The translation wasn't hard to catch. Truth could wait. If it inconvenienced the team. His followers applauded the soundbite, not realizing it was an anthem for avoidance. In private corridors, Hern's allies joked about managing optics. The goal wasn't integrity, it was containment. Keep the image polished, the rhetoric disciplined, the questions predictable. His brand was control. His fear was exposure. So when the hearing began, he leaned back, confident it would unfold like the rest. Another spectacle, where the opposition would rage, and his side would smirk. He didn't expect to feel anything. Certainly not admiration. Certainly not envy. But something in Crockett's silence disturbed him. The way she listened without flinching. The way her restraint made others seem smaller. It was as if she was holding a mirror no one wanted to look into. As the accusations flew, Hern's fingers tightened around his pen. The rhythm of control began to falter. Every calculated smile felt heavier. Every insult from his side sounded hollower. The chamber felt off balance, tilting towards something he couldn't predict. He caught himself watching her not as an opponent, but as a reminder. A flicker of the man he once wanted to be, before politics became a costume. But across the aisle sat someone who had nothing left to lose, except her voice. Jasmine Crockett's story didn't begin in marble halls or polished corridors. It began in the hum of Texas heat, in neighborhoods where the law often arrived too late, and justice felt optional. She learned early that silence was a privilege some people couldn't afford. When others whispered, she asked questions. When others bowed, she stood taller. Before Congress, there was the courtroom. She was a public defender, walking into spaces where the odds were stacked like bricks. Clients who couldn't pay. Judges who barely looked up. Prosecutors who spoke over her. Each case was a fight not for fame, not for headlines, but for the dignity of people written off by the system. There were nights she went home angry, her voice hoarse, her hope bruised but unbroken. That's where the fire was built. In Austin, when she spoke about equality, colleagues rolled their eyes. When she challenged hypocrisy, senior officials smirked. "You're too emotional," they'd say. Translation: "You care too much." But she refused to trade her edge for acceptance. Every interruption only sharpened her resolve. Every dismissal taught her how to turn their doubt into her weapon. By the time she stepped into Congress, she had no illusions left. She wasn't there to blend in. She was there to make truth uncomfortable. Her speeches weren't memorized, they were lived. Every sentence carried the echo of someone who'd been told to wait her turn and chose instead to redefine the line. So when the floor erupted with condescension once again, she didn't just answer, she ignited. The debate had spiraled into chaos. What began as a hearing on ethics had turned into a performance of self-preservation. Members threw veiled jabs, dressing mockery as inquiry. Cameras zoomed closer, desperate to capture the breaking point everyone was betting on. One congressman leaned forward, his tone dripping with arrogance. "Perhaps the gentlewoman should reconsider lecturing us on integrity," he said, drawing laughter from his side of the room. Another joined in, parroting talking points meant to sting, but not to think. Crockett didn't respond. Her hands were still, her eyes locked on the speaker like a surgeon preparing an incision. Around her, aides exchanged nervous glances, and even the journalists began to lower their pens. The air grew heavy with anticipation, the kind that precedes an explosion you can't stop once it starts. She could feel it, the familiar attempt to shrink her, to turn her conviction into a spectacle. Every insult layered over years of being underestimated, every smirk pressed against her patience. The heat in her chest wasn't anger, it was focus sharpening itself into something undeniable. A reporter whispered, "She's going to say something." But Crockett didn't move yet. She waited, letting the noise of arrogance tire itself out. When she finally leaned toward the microphone, the laughter stopped. Then came a pause, and what followed flipped the entire room's script. "Let's talk about integrity," she began, her voice steady, each word deliberate. The room stilled. "Because lately, it seems like some people only wear it when the cameras are on." Every syllable hit with surgical precision. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The quiet around her amplified everything she said. Integrity isn't a costume you put on to impress your donors. It's what you show when no one's watching. It's what you choose when comfort tells you to look away. The man across the aisle shifted uneasily. Her gaze moved from one face to another, unflinching. "You lecture about accountability while hiding behind committees that never meet. You praise transparency until it shines on your own doorstep. You talk about patriotism, yet forget that serving your country begins with telling your people the truth." A few murmurs rippled through the audience. She pressed forward. "And you know what? I've been called emotional, angry, too passionate. But you don't get to weaponize my fire while pretending yours burns for justice." Integrity doesn't need translation, it just needs courage. Somewhere in the back, a staffer gasped. Another member lowered his head. It wasn't theatrics anymore, it was revelation. Then she paused, the kind of pause that makes everyone hold their breath. Her voice softened, but carried farther. "We can disagree on policy. We can fight on principle. But the moment we abandon truth for performance, we stop being leaders. We become actors in a bad play." The silence was electric, and then, clap. 1, 2, 3. The sound drew every eye toward the right side of the chamber. Kevin Hern, applauding, slowly, deliberately. The disbelief spread like wildfire. He didn't stop. Others looked at him, confused, unsure if they should join. The applause grew not loud, but real, the kind that acknowledges something bigger than politics. And for a heartbeat, the noise of Washington gave way to something pure respect. But what happened after the cameras stopped rolling was even more unexpected. By the next morning, the clip was everywhere. Every major network ran it on repeat the moment Kevin Hern's hands came together, breaking the spell of partisanship. Anchors stumbled over their intros. In an unprecedented scene, bipartisan applause in Congress? Did Jasmine Crockett just bridge the impossible? On social media, the reaction was volcanic. Number integrity first shot to the top of trending lists. Number Crockett moment flooded timelines. One slow-motion replay of Hern's clap racked up 5 million views in hours, captioned simply, "When truth crosses the aisle." TikToks mixed her speech with cinematic soundtracks. Memes painted her as the defender of dignity. But not everyone cheered. Commentators on partisan networks called it staged, a calculated PR stunt. Optics, they said. Scripted civility. Yet, even those who doubted couldn't look away. Image of a Republican applauding a Democrat who'd just dismantled hypocrisy was too raw, too unscripted to dismiss. Journalists wrote think pieces overnight. One op-ed read, "For a brief moment, America remembered what leadership looks like." Another, more cynical, titled theirs, "Applause means nothing if it ends there." And somewhere between the praise and the skepticism, something shifted. Voters started posting under their own names. Veterans, teachers, nurses. People saying they felt proud for the first time in a long time. Proud not of a party, but of a principle. Even Hern's office released a short statement. When someone speaks truth with courage, you listen. That's what leadership demands. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a reversal. It was acknowledgement. The story dominated headlines for 3 days straight, and in a country addicted to outrage, that was an eternity. But beneath the viral fame, a deeper question began to echo. The echo wasn't just political, it was personal. In living rooms, classrooms, and coffee shops, people replayed the clip, not to debate, but to feel something they'd forgotten: belief. Crockett, when asked in a post-hearing interview how it felt, didn't gloat. She smiled softly. "It's not about applause," she said. "It's about accountability. Integrity shouldn't shock us, it should ground us." Her humility disarmed even the most skeptical anchors. Kevin Hern, too, was questioned. His answer came slowly, carefully. "Sometimes," he said, "the right thing doesn't wear your party's colors." It wasn't a confession, but it was courage in a different shade. The soundbite replayed endlessly, a rare glimpse of grace in a place built for division. Commentators tried to box it into headlines, but the moment refused to shrink. It wasn't about winning a debate. It was about remembering that conviction, when real, transcends tribal lines. It reminded people that democracy still had a heartbeat faint, but fighting. Crockett returned to work quietly. No victory laps, no viral dances, just focus. But her words had already left the chamber. They had entered classrooms, campaign speeches, dinner table conversations. They had reminded a nation that power without integrity is performance, and that truth, when spoken with courage, can rewrite the script of cynicism. In an era of noise, one clear voice reminded America that truth still commands applause. If this story teaches anything, it's that leadership isn't about microphones or marble halls. It's about moments, the ones where silence feels safer but conscience demands sound. From dignity to conflict, from courage to unity, this wasn't just a clash of ideologies, it was a test of character. Jasmine Crockett stood where many would have sat, spoke when it would have been easier to stay quiet, and reminded the world that truth doesn't need permission to be powerful. And Kevin Hern, in Problem, One Unscripted Act, showed that acknowledgement, even from the other side, can carry more weight than 1,000 speeches. Together they proved something quietly revolutionary. Integrity can still move people. Now, the applause isn't in the chamber. It's in your hands. Because every time you speak up when it's unpopular, every time you choose honesty over comfort, every time you refuse to look away, you keep that same truth alive. If you believe leadership means standing tall when others sit silent, subscribe, share, and keep this movement alive. Because courage, once sparked, doesn't fade. It multiplies. And somewhere, beyond the noise of politics, that sound you hear, it isn't just applause. It's hope, echoing over the Capitol steps.